Hi there, and welcome to the Standing Together podcast. I'm here with Karen Stockham, who is one of my really lovely Standing Together graduates who has taken my training and is a newly qualified estrangement specialist. Hi, Karen.
Hi, good morning.
Do you want to introduce yourself and tell everyone a little bit about you and who you are?
Sure. I am Karen Stockham, and I live in the United States in New Mexico. And I have been practicing counseling for about 30 years now
Hmm.
and decided to take your course to add family estrangement as one of my specialties. So I've been working with families and children and adults throughout the years in different areas and different specialties. And this was just another one I wanted to add as an interest.
Hmm. So you're a trauma trained specialist and you've been working with trauma for 30 years, which is a great, kind of thing to bring to this field. So do you want to tell us a little bit about how trauma and family trauma may relate to estrangement?
Sure. Family estrangement, in my opinion, is a trauma. So, the way I look at family estrangement is that we have a family grouping, and I like to think of that as a trees in a forest. So, we've got different family members standing together, all different shapes and sizes. And when a trauma happens, like it would in the forest, would be an earthquake or a fire or something that would damage that grove of trees, that hits the family. It doesn't affect just one person. So even if it's one family member that decides to exit the family, it does affect the entire grouping. And I look at that as everybody has kind of fallen together and we have to rebuild. So to do that, it's important to do one member of the family at a time, whoever is first in need, and then you have to bring the rest of the family members together to build what I look at as another new family base. So it would look like a grove of trees again, but new and different because everybody's grown differently. It's a process. It's a big process for the entire family.
Hmm. And do you think estrangement can help a family to grow?
Well, I do. I think that sure makes people take a look at themselves in different ways. Because when family splits like this or someone exits, there's a lot to look at. There are reasons they do that, and we need to look at and honor their reasons and then talk about those things and see if we can't get everybody reworked in a new way. And so, yes, of course, we have new relationships forming and we have new growth forming, and people are going to have to do a lot of reflection.
Hmm. One of the
Yes.
things I hear a lot in my practice is that people feel that the family will never be the same again after an estrangement, that the trauma of the estrangement ruptures the family to such an extent that it's never going to ultimately come back together in a way that's peaceful or harmonious. So, yeah, do you mind speaking to that a little bit? Do you think there is hope that we can
Yeah.
bring families back together in a way that is powerful after an estrangement? Can we heal as a group from that?
I think that's possible to heal as a group. It definitely will look different. Um, Sometimes there's not everybody in the group again. Sometimes the group is whole, but whatever that looks like after everybody has done work and grown and decided to come together will be different, but can be healthy and can be better. It does take a lot of self reflection to get through trauma, and people grow through self reflection. And some of those family bonds are indeed stronger than they were before the trauma happened.
Hmm. Yeah, like very interesting, isn't it? That like the family could grow and be stronger. Like, do you want to say a little bit more about that? Like, I think that could be impossible for some people to imagine that the family would get to a place that's stronger.
Sure. Well, one of the biggest pieces that I see in my practice is people don't talk enough. And so I think when they go through a trauma like this and are forced to do some self reflection, to are kind of in a place where they have to talk to individual family members and group members about hard topics, um, about subjects that have been hurtful to one another. Sometimes we don't know that. I mean, it's hard to understand how family members are hurt sometimes or what they're feeling because perspectives are different. Even though we go through the same situations in a family, those are perceived differently by different people. So when you do talk about people's perspectives, people's own progress, things get stronger because you learn more about each family member. Each family member is going to have a different journey through the family. And so as you grow into adulthood, you make your own choices, you have your own decisions, and sometimes those get lost because people aren't talking. So I think that the therapy process of helping people come together helps strengthen relationships.
Hmm. So one of the great things about your practice that I think is so unique is that you want to bring families together and you want to work with the whole family. And so what do you say to, people that might think, well, like, my son, my daughter-in-law, my son-in-law, they just won't engage. Do you think they're any more likely to engage with someone like you rather than just engage in general with the family?
I do, because I have 30 years of experience helping to mediate and helping family members talk and work together. I do think I can help families heal. It's situational, however, because there are going to be times when family members don't want to reconnect, and sometimes that's okay too. It's important to get your family back together, whatever that looks like in
Mm.
the end. And it may not have the same family members in it, hopefully, but it could look very different. And the biggest part of that is to grow and be strong and be healthy yourself. So each individual needs to be healthy and strong in order for the group to come together. And whatever it looks like in the end, it would be healthier to do this through therapy and working together than to just flail by yourself.
Yeah, so let me like talk about that a little bit because a lot of people feel
Okay.
like being healthy, having a healthy relationship is really individualistic. Like, do you agree
Mm-hmm.
with that? Like, do you think that that's fair to say that like if we care about ourselves and we care about our own well-being, that that's an individualistic thing? Like, how does it relate to the whole family system, I suppose, is my question.
Well, I do think that's individual. Um, Yet to be a healthy individual, most people, if not all people, we're a social creature. So you have to be able to get along with friends and or family. So definitely is individual, definitely is situational, but very important to health to be able to form good relationships with friends and or family. So I can see a family grouping also being inclusive of some friends or people that are not necessarily biological in the family system.
Absolutely. So, we do, the media has gone mad about this subject recently. There's been lots of different articles about it. And, I'm just curious, actually, you're a therapist, you're sat here with me, and there's been at least two or three articles being written in big major national outlets saying that therapists are to blame for this issue. So I'd
Mm-hmm.
love to just know, drop in a little bit with your thoughts as a therapist that's been working for 30 years. Like, what do you think? Like, what do you think the therapists have a role in creating estrangement? Like, what's going on there?
What's going on there? Well, I don't think it's a therapist's role to create the estrangement, but I do think it's a therapist's role to support my clients in their decisions and in walking through their process. So if I have someone in my office that is feeling like they need to step back, we can talk through that. I help them look at different alternatives, be able to look at the root causes and get underneath the initial reactive emotion. So usually when someone comes, they're pretty unsettled because pretty traumatized. And so we try to work through what they're actually feeling and how they would like it to look in the end. It is not my job to tell them, yes, you need to distance yourself from your family, or no, you do not need to distance yourself from your family. That is a situational issue that we work through one on one or grouping by grouping.
Mm.
Mhm.
Yeah, so it's interesting, isn't it? Like, do you feel that therapists actually do get in there though and say, look, you should estrange yourself from your family. Like, you should like cut this relationship. Do you think there are instances where that happens? And
I do think there are instances where that happens. That is not the way I practice, and I don't agree with therapists giving the final say. However, I do think that people come for advice, and so they will ask, what do you think? my options are, and what do you think if I do this? And so you can be in a supportive role, but I'm not going to be the one that tells you yes or no, you need to do that.
And why not? Why can't therapists do that?
Not my job. I am not the complete expert on your family dynamic. I can help you work through that. I can help you work around that. I can help you get healthy and learn how to do healthy relationships. But ultimately, it is the person's individual decision based on their experience.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to clarify here, then, do you think that, for some people that there is that sense that they need a therapist to validate their decisions? Because I get a lot of people in my practice who show up and they just want someone to say, yes, you did the right thing. And they want someone to validate their
To
view.
validate that.
Yeah. What do you think
Yeah,
about
I understand that. And I'm sure there are times when they someone will walk out of my office feeling validated. Sure. But
Mm.
they're coming to me with that decision already,
Mm.
or have made that decision, or we've worked through it together, and then that is their decision. I can support them in their final decision, yes, but it's their decision.
Mm.
Their decision, yeah.
So it's interesting, isn't it? Because I do think that sometimes in estrangements, we always blame the third person. Like it could be the therapist, it could be the in-law, it could be the media, it could be,
Right,
TikTok, it could be me, it could be whoever, a charity.
right,
So many
right.
other third parties. It can't possibly be my child that wants this. And yeah, what do you think about that? Like when the therapists get put into that bracket of they're to blame, they're the people that are creating this issue.
Well, I think that's probably a pretty natural place for people to put some blame sometimes when they're not self-reflective enough to look at other influences. And I have to say there probably are therapists out there that tell people what to do. So there are some that probably tell people, yes, you should be estranged, or no, you shouldn't. There are reasons for estrangement. And
Mm.
I have had clients come who needed to step away from family dynamics that were abusive or harmful in a way that they needed to get away from. And that I can say, yes, I agree with you, or, we can work on things to help you get healthy. But yeah, it's a good thing to step away for a while.
Yeah, okay, interesting. So you do think that therapists have a role?
I don't think they have a role in making that decision, helping a client make the decision. So when I read these articles, it's like we're placing blame on a therapist because clients are going in and saying, what should I do? Here's the situation. What should I do? That I don't agree with. I would not say, here is what you should do. I would say, let's look at your family situation. What do you want to do? What do you need to do? How do you need to do that? Let's put a plan together. Is there a way to mend this? Is there a part of the family you can mend with? Is there a need for you to take a little bit of a break for a certain period of time? We can work through all of those things together.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about the role of the therapist. And I know I do a lot of this work, so I'm really happy to talk to it as well. Like around, when you're working with a whole family system, because there's a lot, isn't there? Like to
There can be a lot.
so yeah, what does the therapist do in that situation? Like what's their role? How do they act? How do they alchemize something that's more harmonious in the dynamic?
Right. Well, that again would be very situational depending on who has decided to leave the family. In my practice, when I've worked with families, it's usually adults that start this process, or an adult child that starts this process. So it's one or the other for each other. It's not necessarily siblings that come in, or one that's estranged from just siblings. It's usually a parent-child dynamic. And so that's where we start. But I do try to explain that this dynamic has affected the entire family member. So we look at, and we're usually starting with one person, and we're going to look at the family dynamics with that person has with each person and what they would like it to look like. And then we can work one-on-one, two-on-one, three-on-one, depending on who wants to get involved. So that process usually starts one-on-one with me, and then we bring in whoever this person I'm working with wants to start mending relationships with. And I'm happy to reach out to all family members and see if they want to be included in this process. Sometimes they all do, and sometimes not all of them do, but we repair it the best. So it's a new functioning family, a new family that's healthy and isn't in so much pain.
Yeah, absolutely interesting. And like, I think when I do this kind of work, it really brings out this idea that there's a picture that lots of people don't see. Like, not everyone's
Right.
tuned into the bigger picture of the dynamic and
Yeah.
what's at play and who's contributing what. So I'm wondering if
Right.
you can speak to that, like, how do you
Yeah.
aid the dynamic and the helping people see what the problem is? Because for some families, they just don't understand what the problem is. And they think there's no
Right.
problem and it's all pointless. Why has someone walked away from this great family that gave them everything?
Right. Yeah. Well, it's again perception, like we talked about earlier. You can have situations happen in a family that are perceived completely different by individual family members. And it's a communication barrier or issue. We have to be able to talk about those and accept and respect other people's opinion, even if it's within our family. So that dynamic takes a lot of communication work and takes a lot of stepping back and saying, oh, okay, not everybody has the same experience that I did in the family. Yeah, it's also kind of a new phenomenon to in social media, right? We have a toxic family, let's step away. That gets a lot of coverage right now in social media and the media and so forth. And so it looks like family estrangement is completely on the rise. However, your research is showing that is not true. It's just coming to the forefront more. So we're able to talk about it more, which I think is a good thing because families hide, problems and hide how they feel. When you bring that to the forefront, you can actually get along better. And so I think it's important that we bring troubles and concerns. It would be nice I know here in the United States, it's a joke. Thanksgiving is a joke that we go and we can only stand our family for a little while and then have to leave. How nice it would be to want to go to Thanksgiving dinner and have those kind of relationships that are fun to be around. And we just need to talk about that instead of feel like you don't want to go, right? If we could sit and talk about your perceptions and what kind of family you want and relationships with which sibling. And it's okay if you're closer to one sibling and you get along with your mom and your dad's harder to get along with, and mom and dad don't get along really great. And sometimes they do, but all those dynamics are real in a family. And we need to put that illusion of the perfect family aside and look at what reality is and be able to deal with that and enjoy our families.
Yeah, I mean, it's beautiful, isn't it? Like the idea that if family is a journey, then we could
Mm-hmm.
really enjoy the fact that we've come through difficult times together, worked through something, like kind of taken on a really difficult aspect of our collective being
Right,
as we're a group of people. And
right.
I don't think we see things like that, actually. We kind of see things as like they need to work and they don't work. Oh no, that's wrong. I'm wrong. It's abnormal. Whereas I kind of feel like, that satisfaction that you might get in a couple relationship where you work through something really hard. You really like, you go through something together and you come out the other end and you're a lot stronger as a force because you have worked
Right,
that. And I feel
right.
the same is true of families. If we can get together and kind of get our attitude together that that's what we need to do, it can be really powerful and beautiful that,
Yeah.
and get through that. So I'm curious what you think, like, that, what the other side could be in terms of that sense of satisfaction that you took something on and didn't just kind of walk away from
Right.
it and rupture it without kind of trying the repair.
Right. Yeah, I agree. Family have such different relationships between everybody within the family. So I kind of look at relationships as, we'll start with two individuals and it's this cycle people get into in the middle. So it's not, you can have a discussion, a disagreement, something, and it triggers each other, but it's not really personal.
Mm.
Um, Interesting to say that because you can't personalize each other's traumas and discussion and so forth. And I can say don't personalize, but family's kind of personal relationships. So that's kind of a dichotomy there, right? To say don't take it personally when
Mm.
it's personal. But these dynamics are different with everyone. So if you have, mom and dad and three siblings, there's going to be relationships between each of those people, right? So there's going to be cycles between siblings, there's going to be cycles between mom and dad, between dad and each child, mom and each child. So there's a lot of dynamic to work with there. So, it's going to be very different when we get to the other side, but it's stronger and it's better because we're talking about the trauma that has gone through and what those perceptions are and how it affected you personally and how the family dynamic was affected. And then learning how to respect each other's choices, each other's process, each other's experience helps stabilize a much stronger relationship in the end.
No, absolutely. I really agree with you because all relationships grow when we take on challenge, right? And we get through them. We
Right.
try.
And walking away from challenges, that actually, internalizes trauma and that makes it worse. So you don't want to internalize trauma and not work on it. So if I can get families to start talking about what those traumas were, they get stronger. They really do.
But it's so frightening to talk about it. It's so frightening, isn't it? Like, I think that, we can be so scared of saying how we feel or even thinking about how we feel, even looking inside, because some people block themselves off from all of the stuff that's ever happened to them. And it's just impossible to think about, like having a dialogue, even with yourself about what's happened, never mind
Right.
the whole family network. So how do we get people to kind of come out of their shell and share their vulnerability? Because it's really hard to be vulnerable, right?
It
Like,
is hard for them to be vulnerable. And that's why it starts with the one-on-one relationship with a therapist, right? So we've got to do one-on-one and learn about being strong enough to do that for yourself before you can approach someone else. And knowing that, whoever you approach in the family may not be open to what you're talking about, right? So how do we strengthen our own self enough to be able to reach out, be vulnerable, and also be okay if it isn't accepted, and be okay if it is accepted, right? So that's that dynamic that's changing within the family. If you want stronger relationships with family members, my belief is you got to get vulnerable and talk about it. So we can do
yeah.
that.
So I think that's the interesting part, isn't it? That people kind of sometimes say, look, therapists are a problem because they make me talk about my stuff. And
That's right. It is my job, yep, to make you talk about your feelings.
yeah.
Not just to talk about them, Becca, but to uh, contemplate them, understand them, and help them become stronger within their own feelings and resilience. So there's a lot of self work that goes on and a lot of coming back to your own center and being okay with yourself before you can go out and just start attacking other family members' beliefs or things that we've done. So and be careful with that. And so it's a process of learning how to talk to those family members that you want to, and trying not to trigger the cycle in the middle that makes everybody upset. That's hard. It is hard.
And it takes skill, doesn't it? And it takes a lot of
Yes.
non-violent communication, saying like, this is my request. This is my, I don't expect this of you. We're not in a codependency. There's so many patterns that come through our kind of relating life that come into families. And I see it so much that it's like, you're responsible for my feelings. You made me feel like this. You are, whereas
Well, that's
ultimately,
another part of the work, isn't it? Because
yeah.
nobody is responsible for our feelings as our feelings.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, apart from when we're children, of course, when there are like much more wedded roles, I feel.
True, true.
Yeah.
Yeah, and those are difficult decisions for families. Somebody who's not feeling really comfortable in the family dynamic, do they go to the weddings? Do they go to the showers? How do they participate in the family and still feel okay about themselves? There are estrangements that are just inside the family unit. So they're still a big part of the family, but feeling not a part of the family. Does that make sense? And I
Yeah.
get that as well, right?
Mm. Yeah, I had one just today, like kind of, when there's a death or there's a marriage invitation or, and it's just like, how do I deal with that? How do I deal with like this, these collective occasions where we might all have to be in the same place for the sake of someone that we love? How do we
Yeah.
manage? How do we manage
Yeah.
those feelings? Because there's a lot of feelings. And when you've got alcohol involved or you've got like, these big occasions, it can be so hard, can't it? I think to
Right. I agree.
kind of create something healthy that's going to help the dynamic move forward and not move backwards. Like, we went to the wedding and it all got worse. You don't want that. Right? You kind of want, we
Yeah.
went to the wedding and like we managed to all be there for that person.
Right, right. Yeah. And there are ways to do that by getting yourself healthy and learning how to talk to other family members. I don't think that we have enough education around how to just genuinely have a conversation with somebody who disagrees with you. And I think in our current world, the idea of just cutting off instead of working through is much more prevalent. And my practice focuses on let's work through, let's talk, let's mediate that. Let's be okay if our parents have a different opinion.
Mm.
And let's be okay that our children have different opinions as well.
Mm.
Right.
And everyone's entitled to their experience ultimately.
Exactly.
That's where we are, isn't it? And we have to accept someone's difference and someone else's truth. And for some people, they may feel very damaged by someone else's behavior, and someone else may feel that that's just not an appropriate response to their behavior at all. So, you can get into very sticky situations that way, isn't it? But if we can all honor that we've all got the right to our own experience in families and our own
Exactly.
understandings of our childhoods, our own understandings of parenting, then, then it does become a lot more easeful and helpful to see someone's context and say, this is why
Right.
this way without deflecting, right? Because I do see when I work with people, sometimes they don't want to understand that something was harmful for someone else because it might make them have to look at some of their own actions. So
Right. Get themselves and reflect.
how do you help people take responsibility? Because I think that is such an important part of any dynamic, right? When we want to change the dynamic, we have to take responsibility for our part in
Right.
it.
Right. Well, that's again, work on yourself. Nobody's perfect. But what I find the most in relationships is people are actually personalizing things they should not be personalizing. So it's a lot of work around respecting another individual's process. So you can have a trauma hit the family that affects people very differently. Well, why wouldn't it? We're all individual. We're different ages, different sizes and shapes, different experiences. So you're not going to experience the world exactly the same. So when I'm working with a family member that thinks, well, why would they leave this perfect family? Well, why would they? We probably should ask that question. I don't think I can figure that out with the person I'm one-on-one with because they don't know the experience of the child or the adult that left, right? So we have to be able to get them into the conversation and be okay with their answer. Yeah, and again, like if I look at the visual I use with the trees, there aren't two that are exactly alike. If I have a wind or an earthquake or something go through a group of trees, they're not going to all be affected the same. Some have thicker trunks, some have leafy leaves, right? So it's all going to be different. And that's true of a family. A trauma will hit everybody differently. And to expect everyone to react the same is not realistic. And I think, in this day and age, we're much more free to be individual. And to talk about being individual and having our own views. But it is my opinion that people do not accept those views as much as we ought to. Just be different. Just be allowed to be different. Even within the same family unit.
Okay, yeah. Well, look, we're going to leave it there. I think that's a powerful note to end in, because I think that's one of humanity's greatest challenges. How do we accept
Yeah, I agree.
So I think let's leave it on a big philosophical point. And I'm so pleased that you've started this practice and that I was able to help you with my Standing Together training in helping you find the confidence and skill to kind of launch yourself into this new niche, although you bring so much experience from your other practice and your years before that. But I think it's exciting that you're going to be in this field, and I'm really pleased because you're such a stable, grounded operator, and I think many people will be in great stable hands, like helping with you helping them through the pain that they're in, either individually or collectively. So thank you so much for stepping up.
Well, thank you, and thank you for the training. It was really really nice to be able to go to one place and wrap my arms around the research and the media explosion at the same time and be able to put that in perspective. So I appreciate that.
Well, my sense is you'll have a lot more involvement with the media very soon. So I'll look forward to seeing how you put the training into action. So yeah,
All right.
and always here for you, of course. So thank you
All
so much
right.
for
Thank
coming on
you.
the podcast and having such an interesting chat. And yeah, we'll see you soon.
Okay. Thanks, Becca.